Hello and welcome to episode 153 of the Health Oddity podcast. You're looking funny, Pete. It is 153, isn't it?
Yeah, I was just thinking because in podcast land, I was editing today's podcast to go out tomorrow.
That we recorded about 3 weeks ago.
Hang on. That's you're right.
We are episode 153. Okay, good. And we are joined by a very, 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 very special guest today, who last joined us on episode 100. And we were trying to kind of tally up either to get him on for 150 or the exact 3-year anniversary, which would be 156. But we've gone for 153 because I'm away next week, and we hopefully will have a very special episode, I think, coming up in the next month or so with this guest and Phil Maffetone as well, which we spoke about, and we spoke to Phil 3 weeks ago now, 3 episodes.
Which is the one I've just been editing.
Okay, cool. So we are joined by we won't try and eke out the suspense. We are joined by Dan John. How are you doing, Dan?
I'm doing really well. Things are good. I mean, I don't know how much depth you want on how things are good, but I got to tell you, I feel like I've caught my first. I'm breathing again for the first time in four years or so. So, yeah, I think the dark night of the soul is slowly walking behind me a little bit now. Life is much better. Things are good. Training well, feeling good, marching around. Yay for me. The book, we're talking about the book earlier, it's doing well. Finally, it's starting to get people are starting to, it's, since I don't advertise, it's hard for me to, sell books, I guess. So there's the weakness of my business models, the lack of advertising, the stuff I give away for free. My business model is not very good. Yeah, so there you go.
But I am holding it up now. I will say it now. We'll say it again at the end and throughout, I'm sure. The Easy Strength Omnibook, which, as you can see, I think I described it as a weighty tome. And it is a weighty tome. It's a fantastic book. So that's going to be my holiday reading for the next 2 weeks. We'll maybe touch on that as to why, as we go, as to, and it's easystrengthomnibook.com, I believe, if you want to go and download it.
I think so, or danjohnuniversity.com/bookstore. I think both get you there.
Yeah. So, I mean, I have to say, it doesn't feel like we haven't had you on the show for a year. Because I listen to your podcast every week, I read your emails every week, and I kind of see what you're up to all the time. So it really doesn't feel that way. But it's funny because I do remember last time we had you on, I'd just been to the Giants Live, which I'm wearing a t-shirt here, the Strongman show at the Royal Albert Hall.
Yes.
And I was just there Saturday, just gone as well. So I was just up in London on Saturday at this time as well, which is great. Which was fantastic to see. We normally do a little catch up with the guys actually before we start. We've gone straight into chat. But Pete, just very quickly, how are you doing at the moment, and how have you been?
I'm very well, thanks, and thanks for asking. Thanks for no, I'm all good. Excited about this because, like I said, it's been a year since we've had Dan the man on, isn't it? So yeah,
and we'll talk about this as we go, because both Pete and I have been doing quite a lot, Dan, recently around steps with our members and just being more active and the walking and getting steps up and things. So we'll maybe talk about that as we go. I'll just touch in with Paul because he's sitting in his new studio behind with Baden Powell's house in the background, the tower block.
Oh yeah. Yes.
How are you doing? Are you all right?
I'm all right. Yeah, I'm not bad. I'm just kind of running around. I did sports day today with my son.
Oh, okay.
So there was a parents' race, but it was a relay, so I didn't really have to. There wasn't too much pressure on me to actually win it. I wasn't. It actually turns out I was in the wrong team anyway, so I wasn't even sure what was going on.
Okay.
Did you see the thing? Peter Crouch had a TV program on. It was during lockdown, I think, So Peter Crouch, Dan, is he was an England football player. So he was a striker. He's tall and he's obviously quite fast.
Big, tall guy.
Yeah. He was at his son's sports day, and they had the dad's race, and he didn't win. So the guy won. So they had him. They kept having him on the show as fast dad, and every week him and Peter Crouch had a competition to see who could win whatever it was that they were doing, like throwing things into baskets and stuff like that. It was brilliant.
There must be a lot of pressure actually for professional sports people who are parents who go to these schools and then do parents, mums or dad's race or whatever. It's you can imagine like Usain Bolt turning up at his kids' school sports day or something.
I went to Jim Jones one time, and it's a famous gym here in Salt Lake, and walked in, the guy said, "Hey, you want to do some overhead squats with 405, 182.5 kilos?" I'm like, what in the hell is going? Yeah, you don't just walk around 24 hours, 7 days a week, in optimal, perfect condition, ready to, take on the world. But that's what people think. If you don't mind me riffing on this, I call it snapshots of intensity. And it's destroying the fitness industry. So, you got little, Molly purebred, fitness influencer, and she shows up and she's got all of her tight stuff on. She's got the hair done perfectly. She's all loaded up on all those things that she forgets to mention,
Yeah. That is making a kind of, if you're listening and not watching, he's making, it could either be castanets or it could be a syringe, I think.
Have you seen the one of the picture with the guy going, "Here's my chicken and here's my broccoli"?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So and so they show this workout, or you could come to my gym, watch, and if you take 10 seconds out of my normal training week, you guys would look at me and go, "Okay, I don't know what this guy's doing, but it's got to be illegal." But if you take I don't know, when I train, 6 hours a week or something like that, but you take the other, 5 hours, 59 minutes and 50 seconds and look at me training, you'd be like, this guy's slugs and snails work harder than this guy. But you take that right 10 seconds. And so what fans tend to see, they see him at the World Cup, leaping over some guy, crossing, doing something impossible with his body, and think that's every day. He paid a high price for that strike, for that kick. And things catch up. But I call it snapshots of intensity. And the problem is that is what we do. I watched the documentary called Wham.
I watched that two days ago. Yeah, that was brilliant.
I thought it was tremendous. I thought it was one of the best documentaries I've ever seen. But when you look at a movie, an MTV video, a music video, if you really think that's that person's lifestyle, you're just too dumb to be alive. And yet you take that, that vision of wake me up before you go vision, and you slide that into our industry. There's the problem in a nutshell. People think that that's how we train constantly. Every meal is got 28 different vegetables and 3 protein sources, and that's just not reality. And now,
I was going to say, I think that's we've touched on this before. I think where, and you mentioned sort of social media and influencers and things like that, whereby what normal people, which we are all normal people behind the it's almost like the Wizard of Oz, behind the curtain or whatever, have everyday lives with problems and challenges, and things aren't perfect. But it seems that a lot of people, you go on social media and you see the edited highlight reel, don't you, of someone's life, and then compare yourself to that edited highlight reel, which is quite dangerous, especially for young people and people who are very influenced. I suppose that people who are easily influenced see these edited highlights and these paid for promotions, which are not really, you know, they're not shown as paid promotions, but most of them are paid promotions for things. And like you say, they leave out all the other things that they're doing, and it's just train like this, buy this, you know, take this, and you can have this life, you know. And as we all know, it's not quite that easy.
Yeah, and that is an overriding point I'm trying to make. But I tell you, the pushback on that point, a young lady told me that for every photo she puts up on Instagram, she takes 500 pictures. I mean, wow. I'm not sure. And man, I don't think I've been in 500 pictures in my life. But for every single day, it's 500 shots every day. And then they do those they press those buttons that make you look, you know, this is me, guys. That's me. That's ugly. Gentlemen, I was going to swear, but I know you're this gentleman is not, this is who I am. And I get, honestly, I think that's one of the things that hurts me in my career. You know, on the cover of my books, I don't take a bunch of TRT, testosterone replacement therapy. I don't shave myself. I don't worry about the highlights. Almost every picture of me that you see professionally is me talking at a workshop. And that's good enough for, and I'm not saying I'm wonderful and you suck. I mean, that is true. Well, yeah, okay, I am saying that. But the truth is, this is like, you know, buyer beware, folks. What you see is not what you're going to get.
And but I do have to say, Dan, that you, and we maybe talk about this a little bit, you do look fantastic at the moment, and I've got and I've got photos of you know, of you 10 years ago, maybe, you know. I think when we first met around 10 years ago, and 8 years ago, and so on. And it does seem that you know, I know that there have been sort of fundamental shifts in, you know, in your life, I suppose, and in the way you live, and things that have happened that have caused you to you know, to make changes and to reevaluate certain things. But now you really do look in better shape and younger now than you were probably 8-10 years ago. I mean, is that fair to say?
Well, you know, when we first met, I was still struggling with massively destroyed hip sockets. So I'm a double total hip replacement. The cortisol level I was dealing with 24 hours a day with the pain. It's interesting because my doctor warned me, he goes, and you can train your pain tolerance to go through the roof, and it's great until it's not. And, you know, I won't tell a doctor I'm hurting because it goes against some silly value I have from my athletic career. Are you hurt? No, coach, I'm not hurt. Well, why is that? What's that bloody white thing sticking out of your arm? That's just a bone, coach. I'll spit on it. I'll be fine. Well, that's great. And it's macho and it makes a great story. It's a terrible way to go through life. So number one, that. Two, I've been dealing with personal issues since 2014. And ideally, a lot of that's behind me. That is not a negative thing on Tiffany. It's not negative about anybody. There were some addictions involved. There were some issues involved that you just aren't fixable by Harry Potter's magic wand. Okay, it's just real life. Real life was tough. And of course, I always believed that I could make a difference, and it just wasn't there. I feel like I train now appropriate to be in 66, not 26 or 16. So that's very helpful for me. And you know, the stuff I've been teaching and preaching is actually true, but I got to make sure I apply it to myself occasionally too. The importance of sleep, meditation, eating a lot of, you know, vegetables and all the rest of that stuff. I say it applies to me too, shockingly, not just everybody else.
Yeah, but it does seem, because I know you've mentioned, I know obviously and that's what's great, as you kind of learn and as you evolve and I think that's the thing, when I listen to your podcast, you talk so much about your own experience. I think it's I'm sure he didn't say it originally, but like Mark Rifkind and stuff says, experience is the best teacher, and you can't really, if you don't do yourself, you can't really teach. But all the kind of the fermented foods and things like that you have now, the way you talk about like your breakfasts and things, I know that you you maybe drink a lot less alcohol than you used to as well, and the way so lots of things, kind of your lifestyle, I think now is very different as well, isn't it, in terms of ticking all those boxes.
Yeah, and again, there's nothing wrong with having a good good game of sploosh, or I think, and having a few beverages. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with sleeping in. There's nothing wrong with eating cake at appropriate times. The issue is all the time versus appropriate times. And there is, I would like to, I'd like to tell people, if you can, if you're dealing with those tough life issues, if someone else's burdens are hurting you, self-care is important too, folks. There's a priest friend of mine always says, get off the cross, we need the nails. And I think I didn't understand that until just probably 2 years ago is when I realized I could, I needed to take care of myself so I could take care of my daughters. I could take care of my people. Yeah.
It's funny. This might fit, but I did a video about this earlier in a group, in a group that I run. And it was about me like 10 years ago. And I thought I had low self-worth 10 years ago, but it turns out I had high self-worth, too high, meaning that all the problems that were happening weren't because of me. It was because of everything else and everyone else in the world who were pissing me off and stuff like that. And it's like, and the video was all about how arrogant is that to think that the whole world is against you and everything's about you. But then when you make it about yourself, you become, it's almost the opposite. You make it about yourself, you become less arrogant because actually you realize you're the problem in most of that. And if you can sort yourself out, then you're there for everyone else, right? And you've got more of a chance. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, well, I've done way well, and now I have 2 dogs in my room with me. Good. I agree. I applaud that. There's some things I've been working very hard on in my life. One, you can call it boundaries, or I do like the one Nick Peterson's phrase called bumpers. So one of the things I'm trying to do with, even with my own story, can I talk about fat loss real quick? Would you mind a little?
Yeah,
quick?
we'll go wherever we want. Yeah, no, that's great, Dan. Yeah.
So, a couple of years ago, I woke up and I just said, I just can't. If my goal truly is to be around for my grandchildren, then I can't keep this mass. Highland games are great. They're just they're not as important as my longevity. A lot of my Highland game friends just, woke up dead or massive heart attacks and other issues. And I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to carry the weight around and be a discus thrower. And so I said, okay, let's think about it. And that's when I started this easy strength for fat loss idea. I lift, I do a couple, I get my workout in, and then I go for a 45-minute walk, fasted, with lots of coffee in me. And then after I get my weight, lots of coffee, fasted, weight work, walk, then I eat protein and vegetables. And I did it, and I was making great progress. I'll do my best to translate the kilos. I went from basically 115, almost, it seemed like overnight I was down to 105. And then very quickly last year in England, I weighed 99 kilos, and I broke all the American records in the Olympic lifting at that weightlifting meet. Okay. They didn't count because whatever, the way Olympic lifting rules are. So, and then I made a decision. There's nothing wrong with what I'm about to say, but Chris Shugart over at T Nation asked me to test drive the new V diet. And I did that. And yes, my body weight came down harder. 28 days, extremely rigorous dieting. Not rigorous. I mean, it's a lot easier than the original. I'll tell you, 3 protein shakes a day in a meal, 3 protein shakes in a meal, every day, 3 protein shakes in a meal. And my body weight came down very quickly, 98, 97, 96. And I was so happy. Next thing you know, months later, my weight goes back up. On the scale, my weight goes back up, and it just keeps creeping upward. And it just reminded me that when we're working with body composition, that you pay a high price for quick results. And I have one of my clients, Alex, just talked to me, or no, pardon me, Bill. He lost 10 kilos in a year. And that's when you tell a typical client in 52 weeks, you're going to lose 10 kilos, they'll probably walk out the door and go find somebody else. But if you lose 10 kilos in a year, 9 kilos, 8 kilos in a year, statistically and biologically, the chance of that body fat staying off is much higher than if you lose it 10 kilos in 10 days, you know. And that has really, this story I just shared with you has been really helpful in me. Sorry about that. It's been really helpful with me in what I'm trying to do with other people around the planet is, but it's just like, to me, it's just like education. I mean, do you want to sit down with your 5-year-old child and say, here's what you need to know? No. And then you bring out all the pieces. I've said this 100 times about teaching kids. Could you imagine sitting around with a bunch of 5-year-olds and bringing in all the paperwork they're going to have to fill out to get their, let's say, university degree from age 5 to age 25? It would be box after box after box after box, filling up an entire room, now. And if you said, you just got to do that, I mean, that kid would just start crying, and there's no, I don't think there'd be a kid who'd say, here, hand me that first box. I'll start filling it out right now. No, it would overwhelm you. And I think that way when it comes to fat loss, we overwhelm people. And the truth is, day in, day out, Brothers Karamazov's great line, bit by bit, over time, intelligent changes over time, every day, daily habits, repeatable, reasonable, doable. That's a secret to long-term fat loss success. It's also the secret to elite athletic performance. It's a secret to relationships. It's a secret to writing books. It's a secret. It's the secret that is no secret.
But you can't sell that.
Yeah.
Oh, no kidding. I know. No, my business model sucks. Not only do I not advertise and I give away everything for free, but then when I tell you when I repeat that to you, you look at me, Peter, and you're like, yeah, well, I'm not going to do that because James has a program where I can lose 10 kilos in a day. Well, what is it?
Exactly.
You chop your leg off. Oh, okay.
It's interesting because we were just talking before we came on, but we mentioned it and we'll talk about it now. That those simple habits, sustainable, consistently over the long haul. When we've had James Brees, obviously, who you know from Strength Matters as well, who he's got this WWS, walk, water, sleep, and so walk a minimum of 7,000 steps a day. Water a minimum of 7 glasses of water a day, and sleep 7 hours sleep a night, and he tries to get people just these basic 3 things to begin with. And Pete and I have been doing, well, Pete is set himself this 6 million step challenge for the year. And just with my members, we're just trying to keep people they choose either to do 7,000 steps a day, 10,000 steps a day, or 13,000 steps a day. And we just, every night, we just kind of share at the end of the day, we just take a photo of the thing on the phone and just put it in the group.
Wow.
And say, that's that. And then we say, calling it a day here, I'm 2,000 under, or I'm 3,000 over today. And we kind of average it out over the week as like a rolling average. And it's like you say, those things, they don't really, people want something more complicated, don't they? Or want something more.
I just want to say about James. I mean, I've got a better program. It's 8,000 miles, 8 glasses of water. I don't want to make a big deal about it.
8 hours sleep a night. Yeah. Yeah.
And then you've got
better.
just over 10% better results.
Oh, it's much better. I mean, it's one better across the board. Yeah.
Because I think what he said was, though, because I know it came from, because people in Europe walk a lot more than people in North America.
Oh, we pay a high price for it now, though.
Yeah, in general, in terms of steps. And I know that he'd said that, but people in America are generally like stronger and better at strength training and all the rest of it. But so he said that in England or in Europe, I think the average was about 8,000 or 9,000 steps a day, and in the US it's more like 3,000 to 4,000 steps a day on average, maybe lower. Yeah. So that's why he went for this 7, because it has to be, because everyone's got this 10,000 steps a day, which was a figure that was plucked out of the air from someone to sell tickets or something.
10,000 hour rule, 8 glasses of water a day. All
it's just an arbitrary number. Yeah.
All good, but no. Oh, the 220 minus heart rate thing.
Yeah.
Literally just made up. The guy who invented universal weight equipment just made it up so they could put the chart on the thing. Yeah. It's just an invented number.
Yeah. So so those numbers, although they're not optimal, I suppose they're giving someone something to strive for that is realistic and achievable initially, which is interesting. And that just made me think, actually, in your recent your Wandering Weights, your email, where you talked about, and I can't remember, is it Chip
Conrad?
Yeah. And you said that you mentioned elite performance, and then I wrote it down in my notes because I read it and I really liked it. And you said something like elite performance, training people, elite performance and sport is fun and exciting, but working out how to get the rest of humanity to kind of move and exercise and live more healthy is actually where the greatest kind of challenge and reward comes from, which I think is kind of what we're talking about now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have this inner circle, and it's going well. And there's a guy who has world records in master swimming in our group, and that's well, he's 57. Well, he's an athlete. So the second you say this is the first question I ask when I ask how old you are. No, maybe it is if you're an athlete or not. Are you an athlete? And if you say yes, my mind tumbles over to an entirely different set of questions and things. If you say no, my brain slides over to what this conversation now. I love the fact, in fact, Phil Maffetone's first book I ever read about from him, Everybody's an Athlete. I love that line, except the problem is most people who coach and train think that everyone should be trained like an athlete or like Mr. Universe or like a physique competitor. And that's just not what, it's not what people want, and it doesn't always help them physically. I pay a high price for my athletic career. My first trophy comes from 1967. My first trophy's from 1967. Well, I pay a high price for that. I mean, as I often joke, I don't know how I hurt this finger. Can you see how that finger doesn't go straight? I don't remember how I did that. I have injuries on my body, surgeries, that I don't completely remember how I hurt them. Paid every joint in my body except for my ankles has had surgeries. Now you can say I was an idiot, and I'm fine with that, but that's not how I want. If a young woman who's 45 comes up and says, "I want to lose a few kilos," I'm not going to put them through the grinder. That's a pretty easy thing to do, especially if you give me some time. It's pretty easy to lose. I don't know, if someone wants to lose 3 kilos in a year. I mean, I think, the Dan John WWW, 8,000 steps, 8 glasses of water, and 8 hours of sleep is all you'll need to do. Dan, going on a totally different tangent, which might just be a very short question,
conversation, because as I said, I didn't say, actually, it was before we started recording. Last time you were on was episode 100, and it was called Dan John of the Temple of Doom. And I know in your email you mentioned Indiana Jones and you mentioned the Temple of Doom. I just want to ask, have you watched the new one yet?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Did you
And
like
I
it?
found out after I saw it, I wasn't supposed to like it. Yeah.
But you did like it.
Well, I did, but I can the second I read the reviews and the problems with it, I went, okay, I can see why that's an issue. I did find that new, I don't know what you would call her, but like Toby Jones's daughter, I found that she was a miserable, horrible person throughout the whole film, and I wish you'd have been more of the enemy than, well, she kind of was. I liked it. I mean, you go to an Indiana Jones film to sit down and strap on, and here we go. And I felt it did that. And I do wish they'd have spent a little bit more time underwater in that one scene, because that scene could have been drawn out a lot longer and would have made people run out of the theater, because that's got to come underwater with what they had to deal with down there. That was a great combination of whoa,
Yeah, no, that was good. And also the new, I just watched, sorry, this isn't a film podcast, but just for Dan, I watched the new Mission Impossible yesterday as well.
Oh,
and I have to say that is fantastic. So
wow.
That is well worth a watch, because again, we could touch it, but Tom Cruise is like 61 or something now, and but the thing with that is all the stunts and things are really clearly done in real time, and all the driving and everything. So it's not all the computer graphics and things. That's really worth a watch. Yeah. So
make a point right there about Indiana Jones. Now, by the way, I went to a place called Barnes and Noble, and they have a hardbound edition of the first 3 Indiana Jones books. And if you like the first 3 movies, the books have a lot of additional information. The books, the actual narratives, that really fill out all the characters, and they're all. I love reading books based on movies. I really, in the original 3 books, they made a decision they only could use special effects that were available in like 1933. So in the first one, the guy's face melts off. It's just a wax model, and it's low end. In the 4th movie, they broke the rules because there's all that especially that monkeys. They're so obvious. They broke their own rules. And I think, honestly, the way you save the Crystal Skull and this, I like this last one, okay, is get rid of the CGI and go back to the original rules they had. Even the battle, I think, at the end of the movie is a lot of CGI. It'd have been a lot more fun for me to just use,
stuntmen and real stuff. I agree.
And I could be wrong.
With all of that face melting scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark, I was going to talk about this when we talked to Alex the other week, because we were talking about this, weren't we? And I didn't watch that until I was about 20 years old, because I was 5 or 6 when Raiders of the Lost Ark came out, and I remember I was at my grand's house one Christmas, and it was on telly. And scene, I must have been about 7, and it scared the crap out of me, because he was a scary man anyway. He was a scary Nazi man, you know what I mean? But then when his face melted, it honestly, and I didn't watch it until I was about 20. And then when I saw it again when I was like 20, I was like, I used to be scared of that. It's like it's rubbish.
Well, I wasn't allowed to see Darby O'Gill and the Little People, because it scared my brother Phil so much he couldn't sleep that my mom refused to let me go see it. Now, do you guys know the star of that movie was Mr. Edinburgh? Do you guys ever heard of this movie? Mr. The famous bodybuilder from Edinburgh? You don't know this? No. He didn't win the Mr. Universe contest. He lost to a guy named Bill Pearl.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, okay. This is interesting. Okay. All of you listen. In the 1953 Mr. Universe, Bill Pearl won. And of course, he looked great and he went on. But the guy from Scotland, Mr. Edinburgh, lost to him. Well, he didn't know what to do, but his buddy Michael Caine said they're looking for guys with good bodies for a movie on the a Broadway show on the West End called South Pacific. So this guy went down, got the job in South Pacific. He got spotted. He became the star of Darby O'Gill and the Little People. And then they hired him to do a job, and it was a dead end job for him, but it became what's known as a James Bond movie.
I've just looked it up and I've realized who you're talking about. Yeah.
Sean Connery.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I forgot, yeah, because Sean Connery was a bodybuilder, wasn't he? Yeah.
Sean Connery's a bodybuilder. In fact, in Bill Pearl's book, Beyond the Universe, it even talks about Sean Connery going on the Johnny Carson show, which is a big show here in the States, was in the States. But let me see real quick. Hold on. Oh, come on. It should be right in here. But hold on. It's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth it. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember seeing
that
the
guy,
pictures.
that's Sean Connery, who's later becomes known as 007.
Fantastic.
So yeah. So anybody who ever thinks that, you just luck into things sometimes. So there you go. So interesting type of. Now, how does this? Now I'm going to loop this around. He does this dead end job called 007. Never really makes it famous, and finally he gets in an Indiana Jones, and he does the Last Crusade. And he says, "Why do anything else?" And he retires.
Yeah. Anyway, Dan, can we talk a little bit about why you wrote the Easy Strength Omnibook? Because I mean, I've got the original Easy Strength, the Dragon Door book that you wrote with Pavel, and I know that just from listening to your podcast every week there's people asking questions still about Easy Strength, which on the surface of it was a very simple program, on the surface of it. And I know it like all these things, they I think I've heard you say before, it takes a lot of work to make something so simple,
Well, the problem is you pick 5 exercises, you do them for the next 40 days, you never go over 10 reps. If it feels like, add weight. I don't know how that can get so complicated. It sounds pretty simple to me. We wrote a book called Easy Strength that you can't even buy. eBay doesn't have copies for it anymore. eBay copies sell for $350.
Oh,
So now I wrote another one, and I'm doing my best to answer this question, but yeah, there you could.
That's $350, is it?
Yeah, you can buy a Fiat for that.
And what if it's even signed by the author?
Get out! Really? Wow. that looks like me signing something. Yeah,
That is.
so.
Okay.
So I've been answering all these questions online for a long time, and then I've been developing it. And I got to tell you, in fact, Easy Strength for Fat Loss as kind of a PDF booklet is coming out in a couple of weeks. It'll be like $5, it'd probably be about £5 also, just an inexpensive book that covers that one topic, because that's what people want now. But a lot of the stuff that happened, like when I came up with the concept of the quadrants, we don't really discuss the quadrants well enough in the book. We do, but it's simpler and yet more elegant than I explained in the original text. So I wanted to kind of show, how, for someone who's in quadrant 1, basically a young person, do as many things as you can, learn how to swim, learn how to ride a bike, learn how to canoe, row, learn everything you can. And so I expanded that section. But a lot of the stuff that comes up, like, for example, I've had people tell me they've made squats work in Easy Strength, but it's very, very few. I can only think of one person who's made squats work, but even when he gave us the numbers and how he did it, people tried to repeat it and couldn't make it work. So that started that whole 3 to 5 chapters on why squats don't work in Easy Strength. And I came up with 3, 4, 5 different answers of which each of those answers that then opened up a whole nother thing for me. One of the things I think that's kind of interesting to have a little quadrant, folks, where I put the word push and pull at the top and hinge and squat on the sides. Hi, I'm Dan John, and I am a push hinger. I had the strongest deadlift on my powerlifting team, and I was the only person never to train deadlifts. But, well, I Olympic lifted, so I'm cheating the story a little bit. I was stronger in the bench press when I was 16, 17 years of age than probably most people you'll ever meet in your entire life. At 16, 17, I was stronger in the bench press because I'm a push hinger. Now walk me over to the squat rack and then you see reality kick in. I'm not a very good squatter. For me, if I really train up and I get myself on a lot of coffee and amphetamines, I can do a pull-up. But I'm not, when I first explained this to Pavel, he got a kick out of it. He goes, and he just kind of stopped. He goes, I'm a pull hinger. But when you look at his strong first tactical strength challenge, it's a pull-up, a kettlebell swing, snatch, pardon me, and a deadlift. So if you're a pull hinger, there's your sport. I'm looking at the sport like, wait a second, where's the beast press? If you're let's say a push squatter, you're probably an Olympic lifter if you're put on the earth to do those two things. And if you're a pull squatter, you're probably a rock climber, because that's, squatting keeps you tight to the wall and it's all about pulling. So it's just something that simple, but most of the people I work with, because it's track and field, are push hingers. Track and field tends to reward push hinging. I would probably say the pull family would reward swimming and a few other sports. So it's that simple. And because of my background, I just don't interact with many people who are born squatters. I just don't. I live in North America. Yeah, we do have a population of people who can squat naturally, but most people have more of that Celtic hip that Stu McGill talks about. So it takes me 5 chapters to explain to my satisfaction why you can't do squats and easy strength. And then the second I publish the book, I get an email, why can't you squat with easy strength? Because, and I always tell people, go ahead, try it, make it work, and get back to me. Another thing about squats and easy strength, and it's an interesting thing, I think squats are probably the best thing you can do for hypertrophy. And Brian Gwaltney told me about doing handstand press-ups for hypertrophy. And he goes, it's weird how it really makes people grow. Well, I took 10 seconds thinking about it and it was like, there's a thing called homunculus man, and it's in physiology test. It's the guy with the huge eyes and the huge hands and the huge feet. And my thought was, one of the reasons back squats and handstand press-ups work so well for hypertrophy is you take out some of the most wired areas of your body. And so since, when you squat, you're not getting that CNS fatigue from making your hands do all the effort. When you do handstand press-ups, you take all that CNS fatigue by holding the barbell or grasping it or what you have to do. And it was just a thought. I can't prove it because you just can't prove that kind of thing. But it's like, that's why certain exercises are so good for hypertrophy. But if you really want to get just scary strong, you need that deadlift strength, this strength here. If you want to, if you have a freakishly strong grip and a freakishly strong, when I say core, I don't mean like 6-pack abs. I mean the ability to resist, to be anti-rotation, to resist rotation. If you got a massively strong grip and you're massively strong at anti-rotation, weirdly, that carries over into almost every sport I know. There's a famous story about this elite American football player. He was holding the football like this, and the coach got mad at him, tried to knock the ball out of his hand. And the kid just stood there with his hand like this. And he couldn't, the coach using both hands couldn't pull it out. Yeah. The phrase
that's just fingertip grip, isn't it? You know what I mean? Even with huge hands, that's like a fingertip grip. Yeah.
And the truth is it is a skill. It's a gift if you have it. That just makes you better than everybody else. It reminds me of a story when my father, this is a good story, if you don't mind me telling you. So when I was young, soccer, football became popular where I live. And so my dad went to the store and bought one. And, we neither of us understood the sport. And so, we tried the different things. I tried to dribble it. I wasn't very good. My dad wasn't very good. And I tried kicking it and we weren't very good. And my neighbor came over and helped us out. It was a good man. And he put air in the ball, and it really made the game a lot easier. Okay, that was a joke. Okay. And my dogs are sharing their gas with me down here, huh? Good thing.
We had 2 weeks ago, we had Becca Robertson, who's like the current UK strongest woman, and she was world's strongest woman. And it was really interesting when we normally, when we speak to someone, sometimes we'll say, well, what's next? What's your goal? What would you, what is it you're working on? And we laughed, didn't we, Pete? She said, I want to be the strongest woman who's ever lived. And then we kind of had this conversation with her around what that meant, and how she wants to win, or she's going to win the world's strongest woman 5 times, because the most anyone's ever won it is 3, and she wants to win it 5 and win like the Arnold strong woman, and the Europeans and all the rest of it. And you're saying about grip, because I don't know how familiar you are with those captains of Crush.
Sure, yeah,
the grippers, yeah. So I just said to her, like, oh, what? Because she's like holds lots of grip records as well, around grip and axle bar deadlifting and stuff like that. And she's a huge lady as well. And she's closed the number 2.5 and the number 3, captains of Crush. And so you're saying about grip strength, I mean, and we've just been I've just been to the Giants Live, the Strongman Classic at the Royal Albert Hall, which was won by an American, Evan Singleton. They called him T-Rex. He won it. And then Tom Stoltman from Scotland came second. And Mitch Hooper, who's the current world's strongest man from Canada, came third. So it was great seeing all of them. But the grip you see on those, because they're huge men and huge people anyway, the hands are huge. But it made me think, you said about this payoff and this, because a lot of these people there, some of them were 180 kilos, 160 kilos in weight. And people like that don't tend to live till they're like 80 or 90, do they?
No.
In
a word.
I've trained some. So here in the western part of the United States, we have a large Polynesian population. And so I've mentioned this on the show before. I mean, I had a 15-year-old boy bench press 175 kilos.
Wow.
But his wrist, okay, so I've got these delicate, lovely, honestly, these are royal wrists. They're made for that, okay? His wrists were probably, I would say, upwards, almost double the size of my wrists. And you can't train that. You can't train massive wrist size. You can't train in the same way you can't train sorry, that's my daughter calling. You can't train the bottom position of a squat. Like the great test the Bulgarians used when they were elite. They took every 14-year-old or whatever, and they just put their hands on their shoulders and put them in the bottom position. And then the other test was a standing long jump. That's it. If you naturally could drop into that bottom position, you naturally had you had that big standing long jump, then they progress with you. In the same way, when you walk into a room, probably one person out of 10,000 could be a strong man, honestly, right? In the same way that only one person out of millions probably can be an elite bodybuilder. I mean, Steve Reeves and Lee Haney. You guys, I don't know if Lee Haney.
Yeah.
Lee Haney's waistline was that big when he weighed 130 kilos. You can't coach that. Steve Reeves' waistline never got big. They were both like this. And then I remember Dick Nottmeyer explained this to me. All you do is you take your arm and you go this way. And you see that big gap I have?
Yeah. I
have a 3 or almost 4 finger gap, which is great if you want to throw things far, but it's terrible if you want to be a bodybuilder. So I'm wired and kind of built to throw things, but I'm not wired to stand up on a stage and do that. And so it comes down, you can say a sentence like, I want to be the 12-time world's strongest man, but if your wrists are like my wrists, and you're not comfortable walking around at 165 kilos, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
In the
I
same
think
way,
so I was going to say they had Bill Kazmaier was there, who was like, I think 3 times world's strongest man from America in the 80s and 90s maybe, and Magnus von Magnusson was there, who was 4 times world's strongest man from Iceland. But they're actually looking pretty good being older now. They're probably both around the 60 mark. But I think because, like you say, when they've got older, they've consciously, they're a lot smaller, they've shrunk down, they kind of look fit, they look healthy, but they've kind of let go of all of that mass, because I think that's kind of what you were saying.
Have you seen the Dorian Yates videos,
Yes.
Documentary?
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting, he does smoke a little bit of herbal relaxants, but when you hear him talk, the number of bodybuilders years ago, there was a magazine that used to have a thing called Deadpool, where you guessed what bodybuilder was going to die in the upcoming year. They got rid of it for some reason. I wonder why. But when you watch that documentary with Dorian Yates, it is interesting because you hear that idea of longevity showing up a little bit more. He talks much more about health. One of the things that hurts a lot of the guys I know, there's a picture someone shared with the other day. It's me with Brian Oldfield, shot put world record holder, John Powell, discus world record holder, Yuri Sadiq, hammer current world record holder still, and me in a picture like this. I'm the only one that's still alive. And in that picture, and it's not that long ago, John died last August. But one of the things, and I was good friends with all of them, but one of the things, it didn't matter if we said, I'm drinking 2 cups of coffee. Brian Oldfield's first comment would be, I'm drinking 5 cups of coffee. And that is something that you have to turn off. And that is very difficult. One of the hardest lessons for young bodybuilders to learn is that most bodybuilders don't look like contest shape most of the time. They soften up, they harden up, they soften up. And you got to make a conscious choice to no longer do all those extra supplements that you have to take to be an elite bodybuilder. And you have to agree not to be the most cut, biggest bicep person in the room. And that is a tough choice to make.
I've got no, go on, Paul, because you have
Joe. Yeah, I was about to say there's that. Well, we can talk about that, and there's this the guy, the YouTube star, Joe Aesthetics or whatever he went by. Do you know him?
Joe Linda.
I said no one can hear me, can they? It's all right. Doesn't matter.
No, I can hear you. I think Paul was just asking about. There's a guy, Joe Aesthetic, or what did you say his name was, Pete?
Joe Linda, I think. I've never heard of him until I saw
he died like last week or something. He was only 30 years old, but he was like one of these kind of social media influencer bodybuilders, absolutely shredded to bits. He had such low body fat, like all the time, and he died at 30 years old.
Well, wow. Well, not everybody can be clean like the Liver King. So
I've got yeah, the question I was going to ask around this, because obviously, you've been lifting weights since 1965. We know this. It's great. And at what point did you see a switch where people think that being ripped is healthy, if that makes sense? Because it's not necessarily, is it? It's like health is longevity, like you've just been talking about. You've just talked for 10 minutes. So where did that come from? Where did that start to happen?
Well, it's actually it's even before Clarence Bass. So Clarence Bass, I have great respect for Clarence Bass. He's Mr. Ripped. He got himself down to 2.4% body fat. I've talked to him. I have all of his books. Before I remember there was a Polish bodybuilder, something Wenzler or something like that. And he started showing up with this really venous look. And I remember Iron Man magazine, the original, not the one now, saying how it looked odd. Dale Adrian, 1974, maybe 1975, Mr. Olympia, he shows up more ripped than normal. And then, of course, there was an argument there for a while. Is Frank Zane the body type we want? You had that very large Arnold Franco look, and then that more racehorse look, of Frank Zane. But when the Mass Monsters showed up in the 80s, 90s, I quit following it. But ripped, the idea of ripped was probably the only other direction they could go, because you would kind of feel you're not going to get much bigger than Lou Ferrigno was in 76, 77. You just can't. And then even like the Lee Haney body type, where the DNA was just his, he was born to be just better, for that sport. But the massively ripped thing, that's moreish modern. That's more modern than you think. Problem you have with having me on your podcast, modern to me is the past 40 years. So that's not a good reference point.
You see, for me, because I look at like in the last 20 years, and even like Hugh Jackman in the first, I've said this loads, in the first X-Men film, he'd be skinny fat now, wouldn't he? In that, he'd probably be described as that, because he's not ripped. He looks like me, to be honest. Well, and then when you go and do the later ones, that's when there's kind of pressure on to be the Marvel ripped superhero sort of thing. So even in the last 20 years, it's changed.
Well, you look at that scene in Green Lantern when Ryan Reynolds gets that new body. I don't know how they did that, or how long he was. I'm sure that was a one-off take, and that he paid a high price for that. Well, we know that Tom Hanks, he has claimed that he became diabetic doing the movie Castaway, having his body go from huge to ripped. And of course, that 6-month period. And I guess fortunately he got sick during it, which helped him lose even more weight and all that. But that whole thing, I agree. And, you see that famous, it's in Arnold's new documentary, which I don't think is very good. I don't think a person should have their own documentary. And it's pretty obvious to me that, it seems like I wouldn't be surprised if he produced it. He got the last word on every conversation there. But, he talks about Linda Hamilton being so ripped. Is it Terminator 2?
Terminator 2, yeah.
And and everyone's talking about her biceps and everything. And I guess they did on the set. But, if you see Linda Hamilton today, I think you pay a high price for making those decisions long term. Whether it's something as simple as diabetes, which is a terrible disease, but manageable compared to other things. Death is not uncommon because of ripped. Being ripped is a lot more. Being ripped is a big challenge on the human body. Love or hate some of the paleo people, but one thing I do like about them is, and Josh Hillis is very clear about this. If a woman's 19% body fat, she probably looks as good as as women want to be and as men want to see. women should be 19 to 30% body fat. Well, if a 30% body fat woman, by the way, and I think that's a great look on women, but who gives a crap about what a 66-year-old codger in Murray, Utah thinks. Yeah. And for men, once you get down below 15, 14%, you're starting to impact your athletic ability. Now, there are mutants, there are American athletes who are naturally at 11%, but they often have other issues too long term. So yeah. But that you've circled, Paul circled the issue in the whole field. In the field, people, I mean, I can guarantee this guy who just died had more followers than I did. Was he the guy who was just always like, he'd put on a hard hat and take pictures of him working and stuff like that? Was that guy?
Oh no, that's his name's like Anatoly, I think. Is that the guy who pretends to be a janitor and stuff like that? Is that the one you're talking about? Yeah. I mean,
yes. And that's a different style of what people, let's just say that's not a look I like, but there are people who like that look, and I'm judgment free. So what happens is that a normal person looks at those guys and says, what a freak show. And then the show, my 900-pound life shows up. Normal people look at that and say, what a freak show. And then we go to a 25-year-old personal trainer. By the way, if you're 22 to 34, which dominates the fitness industry, you'd better be in good shape because God damn it, you're 24. What the hell, man? When I was 24, 25, I was in the Middle East doing my thing and looking good, wearing my Indiana Dan hat on the Nile, looking good, picking up hotties, and yeah, you better look good. When you look good at 66, call me, because that's a lot bigger challenge,
Yeah.
So a normal population thinks everything we do is idiotic. Let me just say that. Only 1 in 20 Americans exercise. Okay. So obviously the fitness industry has basically turned off 95% of the population. Trying to get elected with 5% of the vote is going to be really difficult. Unless the next day everyone Googles what Brexit means. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's a big thing, because John Goodman talks about that a lot, doesn't he? It's like how it seems now that if you just want to live a healthy lifestyle, eat well, exercise a bit, you've gone to the extremes. You're an extreme person because you're not sitting around watching telly and not doing anything and eating potato chips or whatever. And it's like, okay, what's wrong with that?
L. Frank Baum wrote a series of books. The Wizard of Oz was a political satire, but the other 13 books were money grabs. And in one of them, he says, ordinary people are leaves on trees. They die and they fall off. I only like the extraordinary ones. And I always thought that was such a great line. But I tell my people in my inner circle, I tell my athletes, you are by definition are elite. You're in the top 5%. You are elite. It's not a high bar to make. To be elite is not that high of a bar. My 3 W's idea, which is 9,000 steps a day, 9 glasses of water, and 9 hours of sleep, will do more for you than all the other nonsense combined.
Yeah. Dan, we will start to wrap up. It's been so good to speak to you again after a whole year away.
I can't believe it.
Yeah, no, it's been great. If people, I'm sure everybody knows who you are now and follows you already.
No, they don't.
They don't. No, they don't. They don't.
No.
What I know, and I know you're not massive on social media, and like you say, you're not like a one of these elite salesmen and influencers and stuff. But if people want to, first of all, the Easy Strength Omnibook is easystrengthomnibook.com or Dan John University /bookstore. Yeah, .com.
Bookstore.
And what's your preferred social media platform that you use? Instagram?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram. Coach Dan John.
Yeah.
Make sure you put coach in there. Otherwise, you get an Italian clothing shop.
Are you on Threads yet?
No.
No, I'm not on Threads even now.
Me
As in,
neither.
I'm trying to strip back the amount. That's one of the things I'm trying to strip back the amount of time I'm on
Yeah.
the computer and phone and all the rest of it. Yeah.
So another thing I'm doing, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
I get paid a lot of money to judge people, so I'm not going to do it for free anymore. So when I go online and I see something stupid, I say, this too shall pass, and I just keep going on. I'll get these texts. I don't know if you saw them. I have a wonderful Instagram. I checked that. I have a great YouTube video this week. He's a young British man. His name is Liam Riedel, and he's in a wheelchair, and he trains wheelchair Olympians. And it's a conversation we have about doing loaded carries. So some jackass from Australia last week said loaded carries have no value. And I could go on and comment about the way the guy looks, but I'm just going to hold it in. But here I have a wheelchair coach, a Paralympic coach, an athlete talking about how he uses loaded carries to change lives. And I got this other clown saying that loaded carries have no value. I'm going to focus on someone like Liam, who's making a difference in people's lives, versus somebody just trying to get more clicks on his Instagram. So I'm trying my best not to I'm not going to judge. I'm trying my best not to judge anymore for free.
Yeah.
Put it this way, there's a lot of people with big thumbs out there, isn't there?
Yeah. Oh,
From a lot of that. And they're like, oh, my thumbs are really strong.
So on Instagram, Coach Dan John, and then I have a place called danjohnuniversity.com, and you get a free membership for 2 weeks. And there's a thing called the workout generator, and there's thousands and thousands of pages of free books and downloads and articles, and just, I like writing, so there's a bunch of stuff, but a whole bunch of other people have donated stuff. We've got Tim Anderson's Pressing Reset. We got a bunch of stuff from Pat Flynn. It's just, and a lot of people just send me stuff, and we just load it up there, because if you're an emergency responder, we've got stuff up there from this is what worked for me stuff, and I'm very proud of it. I'm on YouTube, but I don't know what my thing is called.
If you just type in Dan John, I'm sure you'll find it on YouTube.
And I think I have 200 and probably, by the time this comes out, 205 to 10 episodes of my podcast. I do my best, folks. I like answering questions. I like talking about this stuff, but I'm not really great on the crap that goes along with it. Like, I don't multi-cut, and there's no, I don't.
You mean you haven't got 4 cameras from different angles recording yourself? And no, okay.
And I take fitness really seriously, but I'm not a big fan of the nonsense, and you guys know me in real life, right? I mean, know the way I am, right? So you get what you get with me, and I just see myself slowly becoming even more older and grumpier. So there you go. That's my goal, is to become a grumpy old bastard. So.
Well, you've just said 2 things you've said there. Hopefully, I think we're going to have Pat Flynn on the podcast soon, because we had.
You can do better than Pat. Jeez, come on.
We had Alex Salkin on the Hebrew.
Oh, you could clearly do better than Alex.
Yeah, we had Alex on, and we're lining up Pat. And then the other thing you mentioned about the wheelchair training, the Paralympians. Pete and I are both assisting at the Britain's disabled strongman event in August, and hopefully we'll get Gary back on again. Pete, we'll have to get him on
We'll have to hurry up, because it's like,
we will. It's the
It'll be the next episode.
It's the last weekend in August. Yeah, we'll get Gary back on, because we've got the Britain's strongest disabled man and disabled woman contest coming up that we're both going to be at. So that'll be great. Dan, thank you so much again for joining us. It's been, as always, an absolute pleasure. I think we better wrap there, Pete and Paul. You don't have any final thoughts, do you? No, if you have, keep them to yourselves. Okay. Please do like, share, subscribe, leave a review if you're watching or listening on a platform that allows you to do so. Like I say, we will be back soon. We've got Pat Flynn coming up. We'll We'll have Gary back on again. We'll have lots of other guests coming in the next few weeks. I'm away for 2 weeks, but I'm not sure how we're going to cut this together. We've got lots of episodes lined up, so there will be an episode next week, episode 154. And until then, goodbye.
I thought you'd frozen there.